First, let's fire all the managers, part 2. Today's Throwback Thursday edition of Morning Minutes in the Bible on An American Missionary continues our discussion of the institutional concept of church, wherein the church is the saving institution versus the individual concept wherein the church is the saved. It also will wrap up our discussion of Obadiah and his prophecy concerning the day of the Lord and his kingdom, Obadiah verses 15 through 21. The religious world is sharply divided by man's effort to institutionalize God's church and belief in a physical earthly kingdom wherein God's institution literally possesses this earth for 1,000 years. Institutionalism, the basic issue, may be ignored. Robert F. Turner, Plain Talk Magazine, April 1980. The Swiss Anabaptists, 16th century, took bold steps to cast off institutional concepts. They unchristianized the world when they taught each individual must obey from the heart the teaching of scriptures, and that church sanction could not take the place of this. Restoration could take place only to the extent that individuals recognized a direct relation and obligation to God via His Word. The church censured Thomas Campbell for communion with those outside its pale, and he had to decide between church sanctions and Bible sanctions. We like to believe he gave up fellowship with an institution to have fellowship with God. We are saddened to realize that many look back upon this period as the restoration of the church, instead of seeing it as a restoration of individual independence to study God's Word, putting direct obligation to God before institutionalism. When we say, but the church that censured Campbell was a man-made denomination, we are not thinking too clearly about what distinguishes the Lord's church from human churches. Is it unbroken historic ties with some body politic traced back to apostolic days? To bring this into modern focus, is the church of which you are a member the true church because it came from a true church, or because its faith and practice conform to Bible teaching? Campbell's church could have sincerely believed that it was the true church, but we contend its practices were still subject to examination in the light of the Bible. Now, who is going to do that examining? What is the higher court if it is not the conscience of each individual who should examine its faith and practice by the Scriptures before sanctioning and fellowshipping it? Institutionalism substitutes loyalty to the party for loyalty to God's Word on an individual basis. It looks to an institution for salvation. The Lord gave His saints collective responsibilities. He intended that they should work and worship together as conditions made this possible. And He gave instructions for the oversight and functions of these local churches. In a legitimate sense, each local church is an institution, and saints who so covenant together have responsibilities to this team, but never to the extent of overriding the individual's direct responsibility to God. Nor should we abdicate individual responsibilities because the church shares some of our work. My responsibility to my brethren is not removed because I support a church which cares for indigent members. My responsibility to teach my neighbor is not removed because I support a church radio broadcast of truth. I must not embrace institutionalism by surrendering parental responsibility to teach and train my children to the church school. I strongly support an active work program by the local church, but such a program that discourages individual initiative is not to the best interest of the saints. The local church program should be made for the saints, not the saints for the program. It seems to me that together prayer, singing, edifying, giving, and the Lord's Supper are all for the building up of the saints to assist and strengthen them in the every minute of everyday life they must live before God. We will strengthen the church only as we strengthen those who make up the church. We must teach and encourage loyalty to Christ rather than party loyalty, the very essence of institutionalism. I hope you've been following this discussion of the day of the Lord and His kingdom in Obadiah 15 through 21. It has taken several days for us to work through the prophetic language and analyze its implications for us here in the 21st century. God's people belong to Him through Christ and by extension become His church. Here on earth, Christians join with one another in local churches for fellowship in the never-ending work of taking the gospel to the world to possess souls through the proclamation of truth. This work continues until the Lord comes and brings this world to an end. If you have any questions about that gospel and the work, please feel free to reach out to me by message or comment. Thank you for watching this Throwback Thursday edition of Morning Minutes in the Bible on An American Missionary. Until next time, this is James McClenny hoping you have a great day.